At her father's funeral, they told her she didn't belong. Her own sister pointed a finger at her, in front of everyone, and said the words that broke her heart forever. "You're not family. You never were." Nobody defended her. Not her stepmother. Not the guests. Not even the pastor. She stood there in her plain black dress, while her sister wore diamonds to a funeral. She turned to leave in silence. But then, a lawyer she had never met stepped forward, holding an envelope with her father's handwriting on it. He said one sentence that made the whole church go quiet. "Before you go, he asked me to read this in front of everyone." Nobody knew what was inside that letter. But it was about to destroy the family that threw her away. Around for someone, anyone, to say something. But no one moved. Not the pastor. Not the guests who had eaten at her father's table for years. Not even the people who had once called her "our sweet Ada" when her father was alive and powerful. Money and fear do strange things to people. Ada bent down, picked up the flower with trembling hands, and turned to walk out. Her throat was tight. Her chest felt like it was collapsing. She had lost her father, and now, in front of everyone, she was losing her place in the only family she had ever known. She was almost at the door when a calm voice stopped her. "Before you go," the voice said, "he asked me to read this in front of everyone." Every head turned. A tall man in a gray suit stood near the casket. He held a white envelope in his hand, sealed with red wax, and written across the front in shaky handwriting were 3 words. "For my family." The man introduced himself. "My name is Barrister Chukenweek. I was Chief Obi's personal lawyer for 18 years. He looked directly at Ifeoma. He gave me strict instructions. This letter was to be opened here. Today. In front of everyone who came to bury him." Lady Christiana's smile faded slightly. "There's no need for that, Barrister. We can discuss legal matters privately, later." "He was very specific," the lawyer said calmly. "He said if anyone tried to stop me from reading it, I should read it even louder." A nervous laugh rippled through a few guests. Ifeoma's face tightened. Ada stood frozen by the door, the flower still in her hand. The lawyer broke the wax seal. The church was so quiet you could hear the paper unfolding. He began to read. "My dear family, and my dear friends," the letter began, "if you are hearing this, then I am no longer with you. But before I rest, there is something I must finally say out loud, because I was too weak to say it while I was alive." The lawyer paused, then continued. "Many of you believe you know my family. You believe Ifeoma is my only daughter, and Christiana is my only true wife. You believe Ada was simply a girl I took pity on. That is the story you were told. It is not the truth." Gasps spread through the room. Lady Christiana's hand tightened around her handkerchief. "The truth is this. 16 years ago, when I was a struggling young trader with nothing, a young woman helped me survive the hardest year of my life. She fed me when I had no food. She believed in me when no one else did. Her name was Ngozi. She was Ada's mother. And she was my first wife, married to me in our village, before I ever became a rich man." Ada's knees went weak. She had to hold on to a nearby pillar to stay standing. "When my business grew, I made a mistake I have regretted every day since. I let shame and ambition convince me to hide that marriage from the world. I let a new life with new money erase an old promise. I told myself I would fix it later. Later never came until now." The lawyer's voice grew heavier. "Ngozi died when Ada was only 7 years old. I brought Ada into my home, not out of pity, but out of duty, and later, out of love. She is my daughter. My first daughter. My true daughter. And I let my new family treat her like a stranger in her own father's house, because I was too afraid of losing my reputation to correct them." Ifeoma's face had gone pale. Lady Christiana was gripping the edge of her seat. "I am sorry, Ada," the letter continued, "for every dinner you ate alone in the kitchen while your sister ate at my table. For every school event I attended for Ifeoma, and missed for you. For every time I stayed silent while you were insulted in my own house. You never once complained. You never once fought back. You only loved me, quietly, the way your mother loved me. I do not deserve that kind of love. But I am grateful I received it. Ada was crying now, silent tears sliding down her face. This letter is my first apology. It will not be my last. There is more you must know, and more that will be revealed in the days to come. But today, in front of everyone who ever looked down on my daughter, I want the truth spoken plainly. Ada is not the outsider in this family. She is the reason this family exists at all. The lawyer folded the letter and looked up. There is a second letter, he said quietly. It will be opened in 7 days, at the reading of the will. Chief Obi asked that everyone in this room be present. He looked directly at Ifioma. Especially you. The church erupted into whispers. Some guests stared at Ada with new curiosity. Others simply looked away, ashamed of how they had stayed silent minutes earlier. Ifioma's face had turned to stone. This is a lie, she said, though her voice shook. My father would never. Your father wrote every word himself, the lawyer said. I watched him do it. He cried while he wrote it. Lady Christiana stood up, trying to regain control. This is not the place for this conversation. You made it the place, the lawyer answered simply, when your daughter humiliated Chief Obi's true daughter over his own casket. Ada could not speak. She did not want to speak. She only wanted air. She walked out of the church into the soft afternoon light, still holding the white flower, now slightly crushed in her fist. Outside, cars lined the street. Drivers, security men, distant relatives who had come only for appearances. Nobody followed her. Nobody comforted her. She sat down on the low stone wall outside the church gate, put her face in her hands, and finally let herself cry the way she had wanted to cry since she was 7 years old. That was when a car slowed down beside her. Not a flashy car. A modest, older Toyota, dusty from the road. A man stepped out. Simple clothes. Calm eyes. He looked like someone who worked hard for a living and had no interest in appearances. Are you all right? He asked gently. Ada wiped her face quickly, embarrassed. I'm fine. Just a hard day. I heard what happened inside, he said. Word travels fast at funerals. She let out a bitter, tired laugh. Then you probably think I'm crazy. My whole life just changed in front of 200 people. I don't think you're crazy, he said. I think you're someone who just found out the truth the hardest way possible. There was something in his voice that felt safe. Not pity. Not curiosity. Just quiet respect. My name is Kalechi, he said. Ada, she replied softly. I know, he said, with a small, kind smile. Everyone in that church knows your name now. For the first time that day, Ada almost smiled. She did not know it yet, but the man standing in front of her, in his simple clothes and his old car, would become the center of a truth far bigger than the letter she had just heard. And her sister would come to regret every insult she had ever thrown at her, once she learned exactly who Kalechi really was. The week after the funeral was the loneliest week of Ada's life. She moved out of the family house the very next morning, before Lady Christiana could ask her to. She rented a single room in a modest compound on the edge of town, the kind of room with one window and a shared bathroom down the hallway. It was small, but it was hers, and for the first time in years, nobody could tell her she didn't belong there. She got a job at a small tailoring shop, sewing hems and fixing buttons for a woman named Mom Nkechi, who paid her fairly and never once asked about her family name. Kalechi came by twice that week. Once to bring her a bag of rice, because funerals make people forget to eat. Once just to sit outside her compound and talk about nothing important, the weather, the price of transport, the noise from the market. He never asked about the letter. He never asked about the inheritance. He never once mentioned the word money. Why are you being so kind to me? Ada asked him on the second visit, sitting on a wooden bench outside her room. Kelechi shrugged. Because you looked like someone who needed one person on her side. That's all. Most men would have run the other way after what happened at that funeral. I'm not most men, he said simply. Ada studied him. His shoes were worn at the edges. His shirt was clean but old. He drove a car that coughed black smoke when it started. Nothing about him suggested wealth or importance. And yet, something about the way he carried himself, calm, unshaken, patient, made her feel like he was stronger than he looked. Meanwhile, across town, the Obi mansion was far from peaceful. This is a disaster, Lady Christiana hissed, pacing the marble floor of the living room. Do you understand what your father just did to us? In front of the entire town? Ifeoma sat on the couch, arms crossed, jaw tight. He humiliated me. At my own father's funeral. He humiliated all of us, Lady Christiana snapped. 7 days. That's all we have before that lawyer reads the will. If there is anything in that will that gives that girl even one property, one account, one signature of ownership, we fight it. Do you hear me? We fight it in every court in this country. She won't get anything, Ifeoma said coldly. She's nothing. A village girl your husband felt sorry for. Lady Christiana's eyes narrowed. Careful. That village girl just became the most talked about person in this town. People are already starting to whisper that we treated her badly. We need to fix our image before that will is read. Fix it how? We invite her back, Lady Christiana said slowly, an idea forming behind her eyes. Publicly. We apologize. We make it look like the funeral was a misunderstanding, grief speaking, nothing more. And when the will is read, if she gets nothing important, we look like the bigger people. And if she gets something? She smiled a thin, calculating smile. Then we'll deal with that when we see it. 3 days before the will reading, a car arrived outside Ada's small compound. Not the modest Toyota she had grown used to seeing. A black SUV, polished and expensive. Lady Christiana stepped out, dressed simply for once, her face arranged into an expression of practiced sorrow. Ada, she said, stepping carefully around a puddle in the dirt path. I've come to apologize. Ada stood in her doorway, arms crossed. For what, exactly? For everything, Lady Christiana said, her voice smooth as oil. For how you were treated at the funeral. Grief makes people say cruel things they don't mean. Ifeoma didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. Ada said nothing. She had learned, over 16 years, exactly how much Lady Christiana's apologies were worth. Please, Lady Christiana continued, come back to the house. Attend the will reading with us, as a family. Whatever happens in that will, we want to move forward together. You're still welcome in our home. You mean my father's home, Ada said quietly. Lady Christiana's smile flickered, just for a second. Of course. Your father's home. Ada studied her stepmother's face. 16 years of watching this woman had taught her to read every flicker of dishonesty behind a kind expression. I'll come to the will reading, Ada said finally. Because my father wanted me there. Not because you apologized. Lady Christiana's jaw tightened slightly, but she nodded. Of course. That's all I ask. As the black SUV drove away, Kelechi's old Toyota pulled up moments later, as if he had been waiting nearby. Was that her? He asked, stepping out. She wants me to come back, Ada said. Play family again. At least until the will is read. Kelechi leaned against his car. And what do you want? Ada looked down the road where the SUV had disappeared. I want to know why my father waited until he was dead to tell the truth. I want to know why I spent 16 years being told I didn't belong somewhere I had every right to be. Then go, Kelechi said. Not for them. For yourself. For the truth. Will you come with me? Ada asked, surprising herself with the question. Kelechi was quiet for a moment. If you want me there, I'll be there. I want you there, she said softly. He nodded, and something in his calm eyes seemed to carry a weight she couldn't quite understand yet, like a man preparing for something bigger than a simple family gathering. In the days leading up to the will reading, Ada and Kelechi spent quiet evenings together. Nothing extravagant. Just conversations over cups of tea in her small room, or slow walks along the dusty road outside her compound as the sun went down. "Tell me about your mother," Kelechi said one evening, as they sat outside watching the sky turn orange. "I barely remember her," Ada admitted. "Just small things. Her voice when she sang while cooking. The way she braided my hair too tight and always apologized for it after." She smiled faintly at the memory. "She died when I was 7. After that, it was just me and my father, until he brought me to his house. And then it was me, alone, in a house full of people." "That sounds lonely," Kelechi said. "It was," Ada said. "But I learned to be alone without feeling sorry for myself. I learned to expect very little from people, so nothing could hurt me too badly." "And now?" Kelechi asked. Ada looked at him. "Now, for the first time in a long time, I don't feel like I have to expect the worst." Kelechi reached over and gently took her hand. It wasn't a dramatic gesture. It was quiet, warm, and steady, like everything else about him. "You don't have to be alone anymore," he said. "Not if you don't want to be." For a moment, the noise of the world outside, the market vendors closing their stalls, the distant sound of traffic, the worry about the will reading just days away, all of it faded. It was just two people, sitting quietly, finding comfort in each other. "Kelechi," Ada said softly, "why does it feel like you already know how all of this is going to end?" He smiled, but there was something guarded behind it. "Some things take time to explain properly. I promise you, when the time is right, you'll understand everything." Ada didn't push further. Whatever he was holding back, she trusted that it would come to light eventually. For now, she simply leaned her head against his shoulder and let herself feel, for one quiet evening, like she finally belonged somewhere. The law office of Barrister Chukunweek was on the 3rd floor of a building in the center of town. The waiting room was full, the same faces from the funeral, plus a few new lawyers representing distant relatives hoping for a piece of Chief Obi's fortune. Ada arrived with Kelechi beside her. Heads turned immediately. Some out of curiosity. Some out of quiet judgment, wondering why the outsider daughter had brought a man in simple clothes and an old, faded shirt. Ifeoma leaned toward her mother and whispered, just loud enough for a few nearby guests to hear, "Look at him. She really brought a bicycle mechanic to a will reading." A few people laughed quietly. Kelechi's face didn't change at all. He simply took a seat beside Ada, calm as ever. "Ignore them," Ada whispered to him. "I always do," he said, with a small, unbothered smile. The barrister entered the room and took his seat at the head of the long table. He opened a leather folder and cleared his throat. "Before I begin," he said, "Chief Obi left specific instructions that a second letter be read in full before any legal document is discussed. Please, everyone, be seated." The room fell silent. He broke the seal on a second envelope. "My dear family," the letter began, "if you are hearing this, then 7 days have passed since my funeral, and the first truth has already been spoken. Now, it is time for the rest." Lady Christiana's hands tightened in her lap. "There is something else I hid from all of you, for reasons that will become clear. 18 years ago, before I built my company, before I had a single employee, a poor young man used to help me carry goods at the market. He was honest, hardworking, and loyal, even when I had nothing to offer him but small change and a promise. That young man's name was Kelechi Ease." Every head in the room turned toward Kelechi. Ada's breath caught in her throat. "I made him a promise back then," the letter continued, "that if I ever became successful, I would help him rise as well. I kept that promise quietly, over many years, without letting the rest of my family know, because I did not want jealousy to poison what I was building with him. Kelechi is not a poor man pretending to be humble. Kelechi is the co-owner and current majority shareholder of Obi Group Holdings, the company that owns this very building, along with hotels, transport companies, and properties across 3 states. Ifeoma's mouth fell open. I asked him, before I died, to watch over my daughter Ada without revealing who he truly was. I wanted to know, before I left this world, that if she ever found real love, it would be love for who she is, not love for what she could inherit. I am happy to say, from what I observed in his final visits to me, that he found in her exactly what I hoped he would find, a woman who loves without needing to know a man's bank account first. Lady Christiana turned slowly to stare at Kelechi, her face a mixture of horror and disbelief. The lawyer continued reading. Kelechi, if you are hearing this and you have grown close to my daughter, know that you have my blessing, given freely, as one honest man to another. The room was dead silent. Ifeoma's earlier words echoed cruelly in everyone's memory. Look at him. She really brought a bicycle mechanic to a will reading. Now, everyone understood exactly whose hotel they were sitting inside. The barrister looked up from the letter, letting the silence stretch just long enough for the truth to fully settle over the room. There's more, he said, and continued reading Chief Obi's final words. As for my estate, I leave the following. To my wife, Christiana, the family house we have lived in for the past 12 years, along with a monthly allowance, so she is never without comfort. To my daughter, Ifeoma, her personal accounts and properties already gifted to her during my lifetime, along with a portion of company shares equal to her contribution to the business, which, as the records will show, has been minimal. Ifeoma's face flushed red with humiliation. To my first daughter, Ada, born of my first wife Ngozi, I leave the majority ownership of Obi Group Holdings, all properties registered under my name, and the position of company chairwoman, effective immediately, to be guided in the transition by my business partner and trusted friend, Kelechi Ease, who already holds equal shares as promised to him 18 years ago. The lawyer closed the folder gently. That concludes the will, he said quietly. For a moment, nobody in the room moved. Then Lady Christiana rose to her feet, her voice sharp with panic. This is impossible. There must be some mistake. She wasn't even raised as part of this business, she can't simply. The documents are legally binding, madam, the lawyer said calmly. Chief Obi prepared them with full legal counsel, years before his death. There is no mistake. Ifeoma turned to Kelechi, her earlier arrogance completely gone, replaced by something close to fear. You own the company? You own this building? I do, Kelechi said simply, his voice as calm as it had always been. You let me insult you, Ifeoma said, her voice shaking. At the funeral. Here, just now. You let me call you a bicycle mechanic, Kelechi finished for her, without anger, only quiet honesty. Yes. I heard you. Both times. Why didn't you say something? Lady Christiana demanded. Because Chief Obi asked me not to, Kelechi said. And because I wanted to see, with my own eyes, how this family truly treats people they believe have nothing to offer them. He turned to look at Ada, who was staring at him with an expression somewhere between shock and heartbreak. You knew, Ada said softly. This whole time. You knew who you were, and you let me believe. I let you love me without knowing what I owned, Kelechi said gently. That was never meant to hurt you, Ada. That was meant to protect what we were building. Your father made me promise. Ada stood up slowly, her hands trembling. It was too much, the funeral, the letters, the will, and now this. She turned and walked quickly out of the room, leaving stunned silence behind her. Ada didn't go home. She walked, aimlessly, through the busy streets, until she found herself sitting on a bench in a quiet public garden near the edge of town. Kelechi found her there 20 minutes later. He sat down beside her, careful to leave space between them. I'm not angry that you're rich, Ada said quietly, staring straight ahead. I don't care about money, Kelechi. You know that better than anyone. Then why are you hurting? He asked gently. Because you let me believe you were someone else, she said, her voice breaking slightly. Every conversation. Every quiet evening. I thought I finally found someone who saw me as just Ada. Not the daughter of a rich man. Not the girl the family threw away. Just me. But this whole time, you were watching me. Testing me. Like some kind of experiment your father asked you to run. Kelechi was quiet for a long moment before he spoke. You're right to be hurt. I won't pretend otherwise. But please understand something. I never once had to fake how I felt about you. Every quiet evening was real. Every conversation was real. The only thing I hid was my bank account, not my heart. That's easy to say now, Ada whispered. I know, he said. And I don't expect you to trust it right away. I only ask that you remember this. I brought you rice when you had nothing, not because your father asked me to, but because I couldn't stand watching you go hungry. I sat outside your small room in my old car, not because it was part of some test, but because I wanted to be near you. None of that was pretending, Ada. That part of me has never changed, rich or poor. Ada finally turned to look at him, tears in her eyes. Then why keep the secret at all? Why let me find out like this, in front of everyone? Because your father made me promise, Kelechi admitted. He believed, and I came to believe it too, that if you knew from the beginning, some small part of you would always wonder if I was kind to you because of the promise, or because of who you really are underneath the pain. I wanted you to know, without any doubt, that I chose you before I ever knew what you would inherit. Ada wiped her eyes slowly. That doesn't make the secret hurt less. I know, Kelechi said softly. And I'm sorry for that part. Truly. But I am not sorry for loving you the way I did, quietly, without conditions. They sat in silence for a while, the noise of the town fading into the background, until Ada finally leaned her head against his shoulder again, the same way she had before she knew the truth. I need time, she said quietly. Take all the time you need, Kelechi answered. I'm not going anywhere. News of the will spread through the town faster than anyone expected. Within days, everyone knew that the poor mechanic from the funeral was actually the majority owner of one of the largest companies in the region, and that the outsider daughter was now its chairwoman. The same relatives who had laughed at Ada during the funeral now sent messages asking to reconnect. The same neighbors who had whispered behind her back now greeted her warmly in the market, suddenly remembering all the kind things they claimed they had always thought about her. Ada watched it all with quiet, tired eyes. She had learned long ago how quickly people's affection could change with money. At the Obi mansion, things were far less peaceful. You had to humiliate her, Lady Christiana snapped at Ifeoma one evening, pacing furiously across the living room. You had to call him a bicycle mechanic in front of the entire town, not once, but twice. Do you understand what you've done to us? How was I supposed to know? Ifeoma shot back, tears in her eyes. He drove that ugly car. He wore those cheap clothes. Nobody could have known. That's exactly why we should have been kind regardless, Lady Christiana said bitterly. Now every business partner your father ever had is watching us, wondering if we're the type of family who disrespects people based on how they dress. Do you know how many deals I've already lost this week? 2 of your father's biggest partners pulled out of contracts, saying they don't want to be associated with people who mock honest men. Ifeoma sank onto the couch, the weight of everything finally crashing down on her. What do we do now? Lady Christiana was quiet for a long moment. We do the only thing left to do, she said finally. We go to Ada. And this time, we don't pretend. We actually apologize. She'll never believe us, Ifeoma said. Maybe not, Lady Christiana admitted. But right now, groveling is the only strategy we have left. A week later, Ada sat in her new office at Obi Group Holdings, the same building where the will had been read, now under her own management, with Kelechi quietly guiding her through the transition as promised. A knock came at her door. Her assistant peeked in nervously. Madam, your stepmother and stepsister are here. They don't have an appointment. Ada considered turning them away. Old instinct told her to. But something in her, perhaps her father's blood, perhaps her mother's patience, told her to hear them out, one final time. Send them in, she said. Ifeoma entered first, her usual confidence completely gone, replaced by something Ada had never seen on her stepsister's face before, real shame. Lady Christiana followed behind her, equally subdued. Ada, Ifeoma began, her voice shaking, I came to say I'm sorry. Truly sorry. Not because of the company. Not because of the money. Because what I did at the funeral was cruel, and I've had a lot of time to think about how it must have felt for you. Ada studied her stepsister's face carefully, searching for the familiar dishonesty. She didn't find it this time. Just quiet, uncomfortable humility. For 16 years, Ada said slowly, I ate alone in that kitchen while you ate at the table. I stood outside your birthday parties, listening through the window. I was told, in 100 small ways, that I didn't belong. And then, at my own father's funeral, you said it out loud, in front of everyone. Ifeoma lowered her eyes. I know. I'm not going to pretend that one apology fixes 16 years, Ada said. But I'm also not interested in revenge. My father spent his whole life hiding the truth out of fear and shame. I don't want to build my future the same way, holding on to anger just because I finally have the power to. Lady Christiana stepped forward slightly. Does that mean you'll allow us to remain part of your life? It means I'll give you the chance to prove you've changed, Ada said carefully. Not because I owe you anything. But because holding on to hatred has never once made me feel better, and I refuse to let it start now. Ifeoma's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, Ada. I don't deserve it, but thank you. No, Ada agreed quietly. You don't. But I'm choosing to give it anyway. Months passed. Ada settled comfortably into her role as chairwoman, guided patiently by Kelechi, who never once tried to overshadow her decisions or take credit for her growing confidence in the boardroom. Their relationship slowly healed, the wound of the hidden truth softening into understanding. Ada had asked him once more, gently, why he had never told her sooner. Because I was afraid, Kelechi admitted honestly. Afraid that if you knew everything from the start, we would never have had those quiet evenings, those simple conversations, that version of us that had nothing to do with money. I was selfish in that way. I wanted to know you loved the version of me with the old car and a small house, before you ever met the version of me sitting in boardrooms. And now that I know both versions? Ada asked. Kelechi smiled softly. Now I know, without any doubt, that it was never the money you fell for. Ada reached for his hand, the same way she had that first quiet evening outside her small room. It never was. Ifeoma, true to her word, slowly began to change. She started visiting Ada's office, not to ask for money or favors, but simply to talk, awkwardly at first, then more comfortably as the months passed. She even began working, quietly, in a junior position at the company, insisting on earning her place rather than being handed one. Lady Christiana remained more guarded, more difficult to fully trust, but even she softened over time, no longer the sharp-tongued woman from the funeral, but someone slowly learning that reputation meant far less than the people you chose to hurt or protect along the way. 1 year after the funeral that had shattered her world, Ada stood at the edge of a small, quiet gathering, not a lavish party, not a display of wealth, but a simple engagement ceremony in the same garden where Kelechi had once found her crying on a bench. Ifeoma stood beside her this time, not mocking, but smiling, genuinely happy for the sister she had once tried to erase from the family. Lady Christiana sat quietly among the guests, watching with an expression that, for the first time, looked something like true pride. Kelechi took Ada's hand in front of everyone who had once doubted them both. They called me a bicycle mechanic, he said softly, just for her to hear. And they called you an outsider. But look at us now. Ada smiled through happy tears. We were never what they said we were. No, Kelechi agreed, pulling her close. We were exactly who we always were. It just took everyone else time to see it. They said she wasn't family, and that he was nobody. But the truth doesn't wait for people's permission to be seen, it simply waits for the right moment to stand up and speak.